I don't remember asking for much, just something solid, just something real. You were always standing there, but never really stayed. Eyes fixed on the distance while I learned how to wait.
In a dim hospital room, thousands of miles from Buckingham Palace, an old man lies in bed, clutching a stock of tabloids. Flashbulb flare outside his window as a lone reporter hovers over his bedside. Across an ocean, behind gilded palace gates, a king wanders down a silent corridor lined with portraits of ancestors. He pauses at a heavy wooden door, along with his thoughts. Two fathers, one ordinary, one crowned, each stand on the opposite ends of power and privilege, yet they share a hauntingly similar guilt. Well, if they really feel any guilt. They have failed their children. As dawn breaks, the ordinary man, Thomas Markle, squints against the camera lights, sneaking through the blinds. He fumbles for a letter on the bedside table, a letter from his daughter he nearly lost amidst the tabloid's clippings. In London, King Charles III gazes out the window at the walking city. He recalls a phone ringing, ringing, ringing. It went unanswered. A son's plea to meet, to stop the silence. Two different worlds, two different men, bound by one tragic parallel. When their children needed them the most, they chose betrayal, self protection, and silence over a father's love. This is the story of how those choices reverberated in two lives, Meghan and Harry, and what it did to their families. One common and one royal. Welcome. This is Majesty Sussex Report, and I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us.
Said the right words at the wrong times. Told me love was complicated, but silence was fine. I watch you choose the easier road, watch you turn your head. Every time it mattered most, you left it unsaid. All I wanted was for you to stand in front of me. All I wanted was for you to choose me. Just once, just once. You called it keeping peace, you called it doing your best. I called it learning early what I couldn't expect. You protected your comfort.
The stage is set years ago. Thomas Markle was once simply Meghan's beloved dad, a Hollywood lighting director of modest fame. In Meghan's youth, he was the supportive parent, the one who led her school stage productions and proudly cheered her on. But life took its turns. By the time Meghan fell in love with a prince, Thomas was living a quiet retirement in Mexico. He was divorced from her mother and increasingly reclusive. The press printed him as a bumbling, bankrupt loner, relentlessly hounding him for any scrap of information about his royal daughter. Paparazzi camped outside his door, hungry for a photo of the elusive father of the bride. In those moments, Thomas was not yet a villain. He was a vulnerable man being stalked by the flash and click of cameras, his privacy shrinking day by day. Meanwhile, in Britain's royal family, Prince Charles had long been groomed for the throne, but grooming for kingship did not necessarily make him a tender father. When Prince Harry was born, Charles reportedly, very famously, said, "Wonderful. Now you've given me an heir and a spare. My work is done." It was said half in jest, perhaps, but those words foreshadowed a painful truth. Harry would grow up always feeling slightly less, the perennial spare to his older brother William, who was destined to be king. Princess Diana, Harry's mother, tried to fill their childhood with love and normalcy. She warned of what emotional neglect could do and did her best to break her two sons out of the royal mold. I want them to have an understanding of people's emotions, people's insecurities, people's distress, and people's hopes and their dreams, Diana said of raising William and Harry. She took her boys to homeless shelters and to meet HIV/AIDS patients, planting in them seeds of empathy that the monarchy had often failed to nurture. Diana's instincts were grounded in moral clarity. She believed the monarchy needed to change and become closer to the people. She knew that without adaptation, the royal family stiff upper lip approach could crush the spirits of those within it. But Charles, bound by duty and tradition, struggled to follow Diana's lead in the emotional realm. When Diana tragically died in 1997, the royal family went back to its old habits. 12-year-old Harry learned of his mother's death from Charles in the stillness of a Balmoral morning. Charles sat on the edge of his son's bed and delivered the news with gentleness. But notably, Pa didn't hug me. His hand did fall once more around my knee, and he said, "It's going to be okay." But after that, nothing was okay for a long time, Harry later recalls. The young prince received kindness, but not the full embrace of comfort he desperately needed. Charles, by his own upbringing, was not great at showing emotions. In even ordinary times, in extraordinary grief, he defaulted to the royal stoicism he knew best. These early cracks, an ordinary father overwhelmed and an extraordinary father emotionally distant, formed the fault lines of greater betrayals to come. Neither Thomas nor Charles could foresee it yet, but the choices they would make in critical moments would neglect their basic moral obligations as fathers, and their children, Meghan and Harry, would bear the brunt of that failure. Spring 2018. The world buzzed with anticipation for a fairy tale. American actress marries British prince. Meghan Markle, set to wed Prince Harry, wished for her father to be there to walk her down the aisle. Thomas Markle initially planned to attend, but behind the scenes, he felt cornered and unprotected. In his quiet Mexican town, he faced constant harassment from paparazzi who portrayed him as a sloppy, uncaring dad. Frustrated by unflattering photos of him buying beer and fast food, Thomas made a fateful choice. He struck a deal with paparazzi to stage candid photos that might redeem his image. In one set of pictures, Thomas is seen earnestly poring over a book titled Images of Britain, preparing for his daughter's royal future. In another, he's being measured for a suit. In yet another, he's exercising outdoors, supposedly getting fit for the big day. It was all choreographed puffery, a father trying to control his narrative. The plan backfired spectacularly. Less than a week before the wedding, the UK's Mail on Sunday published surveillance video exposing that these heartwarming dad-getting-ready photos were fake. The news exploded. Thomas Markle had conspired with paparazzi for paid photos. He was so publicly shamed by this revelation that he spiraled into mortification. Meghan and Harry were stunned. Harry texted his future father-in-law in a last-ditch effort. "Speaking to the press will backfire. Trust me, Tom. Only we can help you," he warned. But the damage was done. Thomas told them by text that he would not be coming to the wedding at all, citing that he was hospitalized with chest pains after the stress and embarrassment. In that message, Thomas apologized and said he loved Meghan, but the breach was now public and raw. On May 19th, 2018, Meghan walked down the aisle, escorted halfway by King Charles, a gracious offer from Harry's father to stand in, even as her own father was absent. To the millions watching, the ceremony was still beautiful. Yet behind the scenes, a father-daughter relationship lay in tatters. Meghan released a brief statement about Thomas's absence, asking for space for him and noting his health. She hoped to spare him further embarrassment, but privately she must have been heartbroken. The man who had been her devoted dad was now a no-show on the most important day of her life, under circumstances that felt like a personal betrayal played out in global headlines. Over in the House of Windsor, that spring marked not just a wedding, but a test for Charles as well. He performed the public duty of taking Meghan's arm with a smile, but how was his relationship with his younger son faring? In truth, Harry's bond with his father had long carried unspoken strain. Charles had tried in his own way to be supportive. He was actually the one who walked Meghan toward the altar, a gesture of inclusion and a sign that outwardly he accepted Harry's choice. But inside the family, the alarm bells were ringing. Harry and Meghan's union brought an onslaught of bigotry and invasive press coverage that his father did little to fend off. Even as early as their engagement in 2017, racist undertones marred media commentary on Meghan. The palace's traditional silence in the face of tabloid abuse was beginning to fray Harry's trust. If there was one lesson Charles might have learned from Diana's era, it was that silence can enable torment. The paparazzi's relentless pursuit of Diana had contributed to her death in 1997, something Harry has never forgotten. Yet here was history threatening to repeat, with Meghan facing media hostility and Harry desperate for his family's protection. In those honeymoon days of Harry and Meghan's marriage, Charles's failure was quieter than Thomas's, but no less potent. He did not stage any betrayals. Rather, he failed to take a stand. As the couple was besieged by racist tropes and smear campaigns, the royal family largely maintained a stiff silence. There were no public condemnations of the ugliness directed at Meghan. Even when a BBC radio host tweeted a photo of a chimpanzee and captioned it, "Royal Baby Leaves Hospital," after the birth of Harry and Meghan's son Archie, a disgusting racist joke, the palace said nothing in public. The BBC swiftly fired the presenter for the offence, but from the royals there was deafening quiet. The presenter got his job back within a week or so. Charles, a grandfather now to a baby of mixed race, kept his head down and carried on with royal business, avoiding any direct confrontation with the press or defense of his son's new family. To Harry, this silence was more than just following protocol, it was a personal betrayal of moral duty. How could a father who knows the pain the press can inflict choose not to speak up for his son and daughter-in-law? The echoes of Diana's warnings were loud. The monarchy needed to adapt, to be more human. Yet Charles seemed paralyzed by the old mantra, never complain, never explain, even as his child's life was being poisoned by racism and hate. In the months following the royal wedding, two very different sets of communications, both deeply personal, would expose how far these fathers had drifted from their most basic role, protection. The first was a private letter. In August 2018, just a few months after the wedding, Meghan wrote to her father, Thomas Markle. The letter was handwritten, deeply personal, and never intended for public view. In it, Meghan pleaded with him to stop engaging with the tabloid press. She asked him to let her and Harry live in peace and to repair their relationship privately without the noise and distortion of public spectacle. This was not a public statement. It was a daughter reaching out, cautiously, painfully, to a father who had already broken her trust. Thomas Markle did not protect that letter. In early 2019, he shared it with the Mail on Sunday, which published substantial excerpts across its pages. Meghan's private words, written in vulnerability and hope, were transformed into public content, debated, dissected, and monetized. For Meghan, this was devastating. She sued the newspaper for invasion of privacy. The case would later become a landmark legal victory, with the court ruling decisively that the publication of the letter was unlawful and unjustified. During that legal battle, Thomas Markle did not support his daughter. He did not submit sworn testimony or appear in court, but he publicly defended the newspaper's decision to publish the letter and gave interviews that aligned with its narrative. His actions allowed the tabloid to argue, unsuccessfully, that Meghan had forfeited her right to privacy. The court rejected that argument, but the emotional damage had already been done. One detail revealed during the proceedings was particularly telling. In a separate letter, Thomas wrote to Meghan, later referenced in court documents, he urged her to stage a public reconciliation. He suggested that if she and Harry would simply pose for a photograph with him, the press would relent. If you and Harry don't like it, he wrote, fake it for one photo. It was a moment that clarified priorities. For Thomas Markle, appearance had overtaken substance. The image of family unity mattered more than the repair of trust. What could not be understood, or perhaps could not be faced, was that a staged photograph could never undo the harm caused by exposing private pain to the world. Across the Atlantic, Prince Harry was confronting a different but eerily similar rupture with his own father. By early 2020, Harry and Meghan made the decision to step back from their roles as senior working royals. They had attempted to propose a compromise to live abroad, earn their own income, and still support the Queen on a limited basis. It was an unprecedented request, born out of relentless media pressure and racist abuse directed at Meghan. The proposal was rejected. What followed was a tense family negotiation that culminated in what became known as the Sandringham Summit.
Harry and Meghan dropped a royal bombshell last week. The couple took to social media to announce they're stepping back from senior royal duties. The palace wasn't impressed, and the Queen called an emergency crisis meeting to figure out next steps. Global's Redmond Shannon joins us from outside Buckingham Palace with the very latest on this. And Redmond, Prince Harry, along with his dad and brother, were summoned to this meeting with the Queen. Any word on what's in store for them?
Well, I think a lot of things will be on the table, Travis, after that bombshell announcement last week that really blindsided Buckingham Palace here. They had no idea this was coming. I remember, Travis, just last week when it came out, about an hour or two later, getting that email press release alert from Buckingham Palace, very terse one-sentence email saying this will take time to sort out. And this is the start of that process. For the first time, Prince Harry sitting down face-to-face with his grandmother, the Queen, along with his brother, Prince William, and his father, Prince Charles, of course, in Sandringham to talk about how this will all work. Reportedly, too, Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, will be on the line, as we believe, from Canada, on the line, on the phone line as part of this conversation. So what they're going to be sorting out is whether or not they keep their royal titles, what obligations they will have toward their charitable causes, toward their royal duties, what they will have to do, what they might not have to do. Security is going to be a big thing. Reportedly, it's at least $1 million a year to protect the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. If they move to Canada, how much more will that cost the British taxpayer? Will it cost the Canadian taxpayer? These are things we're not quite sure about yet. All these things are on the table. There's a lot to iron out, but obviously this was something that was coming. We heard from Prince Harry a number of months ago saying that he and his brother were on different paths. We heard that Meghan told a journalist that it was being difficult that first year and a half as a Duchess. So this is surprising to many, but perhaps there was a clue that this was coming.
January 2020, Harry met with Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Charles, and Prince William at the Queen's estate. Meghan in Canada with their infant son Archie was not present. Harry entered the meeting hoping for understanding. Instead, he later described an atmosphere of confrontation and dismissal. "It was terrifying," Harry recalled, "to have my brother scream and shout at me, and my father say things that simply weren't true, and my grandmother quietly sit there and take it all in." In that moment, Charles was not a mediator. He was not a comforter. According to Harry, he aligned with the institution's hard line, prioritizing rules, precedent, and optics over his son's pleas for safety and dignity. Soon after, Harry and Meghan were given a clear choice: remain within the system on its terms or leave entirely. There would be no middle ground. They chose to leave. As the separation was formalized, another communication would prove just as damaging. Not a handwritten letter, but an official statement. Harry learned that the palace had issued a joint statement in his and Prince William's names, denying a newspaper report that William had bullied Harry out of the family. No one had consulted Harry. He had not agreed to the wording. And crucially, he felt the story contained elements of truth, that he had experienced hostility and pressure within the institution. Harry was furious. He called Meghan to tell her what had happened, and she later recalled breaking down in tears. Within 4 hours, Harry reflected later, they were happy to lie to protect my brother, and yet for 3 years they were never willing to tell the truth to protect us. That moment was a watershed. Harry understood, with painful clarity, where he and Meghan ranked in the hierarchy of concern. Protecting the image of the future king took precedence over defending a son and his wife from sustained abuse. His voice had been appropriated for institutional damage control, without his consent. Trust was broken. In public, smiles and ceremony continued. In private, the rupture was complete. 2 fathers, 2 letters. And in both cases, the same devastating truth emerged. When given the choice between protection and self-preservation, neither father chose their child.
Doors that never open. One man sat beneath fluorescent light, machines breathing where love should have been. He called the world before he called his child, traded blood for headlines, truth for ink. Another walked halls lined with gold, portraits staring like they knew. He wore duty like a shield and silence like a crown, while his son burned in plain view. They said, this is just how power works. They said boys must learn to stand alone, but a father's first command is not the throne, it's home. Two fathers, two failures, different worlds, the same neglect. One soul pain to the papers, one hid behind protocol and bread. No hands reached out, no lines were crossed for love. Silence is neutral, silence chosen up. A letter written from a daughter's heart, folded hope into every line. He handed it to strangers like her trust was never mine. A son who buried his mother twice, once in earth, once in fear. He begged for safety, begged for truth, but the palace never heard. They warned him history repeats. When men protect the system first, when crowns outweigh the cries of sons and girls and broken words. Two fathers, two failures, one ordinary, one divine. One chased relevance and pity, one preserved a brittle line. No shield was raised, no fire was stopped. They watched the damage grow. Silence is a choice, and both men chose it so. This isn't hate, this is grief. This is what love sounds like when it's refused. No monster here, just men who wouldn't move. They could have said enough, they could have drawn the line, they could have lost the crowd to save a child. The camera, one hid behind a crown of lies. History will ask what power was for, if not to stand between the wolves and those you're meant to love. Two rooms, two men, two doors still closed, but the children lived, and they broke the code.
By the spring of 2020, Harry and Meghan relocated to North America, first briefly to Canada, then to California, formally stepping down from their roles as senior working royals. If there was ever a moment for Charles to act first as a father and second as an institution, it was during this transition. According to Harry, that moment never came. Harry has said that soon after their departure was announced, his father, then Prince of Wales, stopped taking his phone calls. Communication, he recalls, was pushed into emails and handled through aides. I had 2 conversations with my father, Harry later said, before he stopped taking my calls. When Oprah Winfrey asked why, Harry replied simply, because I took matters into my own hands. Harry and Meghan had announced their plans publicly without final approval, a breach of royal protocol that embarrassed the institution. Harry has said his father's response was to disengage, instructing him to put matters in writing rather than speak directly. What Harry experienced was not mediation, but distance. As the couple settled abroad, they believed family support might continue while they established independence. Instead, Harry has said that financial support from his father ended, and their UK security protection was removed with unexpected speed. On 31st March 2020, the official end of their working royal status, Harry and Meghan lost automatic publicly funded police protection in the United Kingdom. The decision was made by RAVIC, the government committee responsible for royal security, which concluded that Harry no longer met the criteria for routine protection. Harry later offered to pay personally for police security, but that request was denied. RAVIC maintained that police protection could not be treated as a private service. In May 2023, Harry lost a legal challenge to overturn that decision. The practical outcome is that when Harry returns to the UK, he receives police protection only on a case-by-case basis. Harry has consistently argued that this decision ignored the real threat environment facing his family. This concern was not hypothetical. Britain's former head of counter-terrorism has confirmed that there were credible extremist threats against Harry and Meghan. For Harry, whose mother died while fleeing paparazzi, the fear that history could repeat itself was not abstract. During this period, Harry has said his appeals for understanding were met with silence. "Family members told me, just play the game and your life will be easier," he recalled. "But I have a hell of a lot of my mum in me." The stakes were especially high because, as the public later learned, Meghan had reached a point of suicidal despair during her pregnancy in 2019. Harry said he sought help from within the institution and was told it would not be appropriate, that it simply was not a conversation to be had. Harry has said his father was aware of the pressures they were under, yet Charles remained publicly silent and institutionally cautious. "I felt really let down," Harry told Oprah. "He's been through something similar. He knows what pain feels like, and Archie's his grandson. But at the same time, I will always love him. There's a lot of hurt that's happened." One moment, recounted in Harry's memoir, encapsulates the emotional distance. After Prince Philip's funeral in April 2021, Charles briefly stood between his feuding sons and pleaded, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." It was a human appeal, but a revealing one. The focus was not on healing for Harry or protection for Meghan, but on Charles's own desire for peace in the final chapter of his life. For Harry, the damage had already been done. The cost of years of institutional loyalty and paternal restraint had been paid not by the crown, but by the son who walked away to protect his family. Even as these family fractures widened, both Thomas Markle and King Charles appeared publicly to cling to a story in which everything was manageable, explainable, even normal. And when things weren't normal, the implication was often that the younger generation was being difficult, oversensitive, ungrateful. For Meghan and Harry, the wound wasn't only what happened in private, it was watching private damage become public entertainment, while the men who owed them protection either participated in the spectacle or declined to stop it. For Thomas, the public stage became his main venue. As the relationship with Meghan deteriorated after the letter publication and the lawsuit, Thomas increasingly spoke through media platforms, sometimes pleading, sometimes accusing, often oscillating between the two. The pattern that mattered most was consistent. He continued engaging with the same press ecosystem that had helped inflame the rupture in the first place. When Thomas suffered a stroke in May 2022, the moment did not turn into quiet, protected family care in the public eye. Instead, it became another media flashpoint. Meghan's half-sister, Samantha Markle, went on television and publicly accused Meghan of elder abuse or negligence for not rushing to her father's side. Whatever one thinks of Meghan's silence, the accusation itself was made loudly, through cameras, again pulling a private family crisis into a public courtroom of opinion. Then, in December 2025, Thomas Markle, now reported to be living in the Philippines, was hospitalized and underwent an emergency leg amputation. Meghan attempted to reach him privately. Reporting confirms she sent a letter that was delivered through intermediaries, and her spokesperson confirmed the effort. But even this was immediately entangled with press presence. Reuters reported that Meghan's spokesperson criticized the Daily Mail for maintaining someone at Thomas Markle's bedside, calling it a breach of clear ethical boundaries and saying it made private communication extremely difficult. The Guardian further described the unusually close relationship between Thomas Markle and Caroline Graham, a senior figure associated with the Mail on Sunday Daily Mail operation, noting he informed her about his health crisis before his own children. Whatever one concludes about Thomas's motives, the public result is stark. Even in medical crisis, the gravitational pull of media remained in the room. For King Charles, the stage was vastly grander and the stakes more institutional, but the pattern, public restraint amid private fracture, was familiar. Throughout 2021 and 2022, after Harry and Meghan spoke publicly, including the Oprah interview, later documentaries, and Harry's memoir, the monarchy's posture was minimal and controlled. Buckingham Palace issued a statement that included the now famous phrase, "Recollections may vary." Prince William, pressed by a reporter, offered a short rebuttal. "We are very much not a racist family." What remained largely absent was any sustained public defense of Meghan in the face of highly racialized and misogynistic media treatment. Consider one widely documented example. In late 2022, Jeremy Clarkson wrote that he hated Meghan on a cellular level and used imagery of her being publicly shamed and pelted with excrement, language he later claimed referenced Game of Thrones. The backlash was immense. Ipso reported a record number of complaints, initially reported as more than 17,500, later widely cited as exceeding 25,000. Clarkson issued further apologies in January 2023 after the controversy escalated. The apologies were hollow. Yet, the royal household did not publicly condemn the piece. Harry later described the family's silence as deafening and called the rhetoric cruel. Behind the scenes, Harry has also accused certain members of the royal family of getting in bed with the devil by cooperating with the tabloid press to rehabilitate their own images, even if that rehabilitation came at others' expense. The full internal mechanics are not publicly proven in every detail, but Harry's claim is part of the record, and it frames how he interprets the silence, not as neutrality, but as strategy. When Charles became king in September 2022, his first televised address included a line expressing love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. It was a gesture, brief, controlled, and carefully placed inside a larger institutional message. By the coronation in May 2023, Harry attended alone and left quickly after the ceremony. Publicly, the family maintained formality. Privately, by Harry's account, the distance remained. And what of Prince William? He emerges as both Charles's heir and, in practice, a key axis of this fracture. Harry has described moments where William's anger flared and where institutional responses appeared designed to protect the heir's reputation first. The result is a dynamic where Charles's failure, as Harry experiences it, is not only what Charles did or did not say, but what he allowed to harden between his sons while the public story marched on. In different ways, both fathers presided over a spectacle that harmed their children, not always through a single dramatic act, sometimes through repetition, sometimes through silence, sometimes through choosing the institution, the headline, the comfort of the familiar over the hard work of protection. How did it come to this? How do two men, so different in station, end up harming their children in ways that feel strangely similar? One answer is painfully simple. Both men made choices their worlds rewarded, even as those choices produced private ruin. For Thomas Markle, the tabloid ecosystem offered something seductive: attention, sympathy, an audience, a microphone that would always be ready, especially when his daughter's name was attached to it. In public, it could look like he was telling his side. In practice, each interview widened the rupture. Each public comment made quiet reconciliation harder, not easier. And the system that surrounds celebrity families often rewards exactly that behavior. It doesn't reward privacy, it rewards spectacle. It rewards the relative who will speak when everyone else begs for silence. It turns family pain into content and calls it news. Thomas became, again and again, a recurring figure in that cycle, sometimes pleading, sometimes blaming, always tethered to a story the tabloids were eager to keep alive. None of this requires mind reading. The pattern is visible. The more public the estrangement became, the more the media treated it like a serial drama, and the more difficult it became for Meghan to engage without risking another betrayal. For King Charles, the forces are older, colder, and wrapped in ceremony. The monarchy is an institution that prizes continuity and image management, often at the expense of human messiness. When Harry began to challenge the system, to say some version of, "This isn't working, my wife is suffering, I'm scared, we need protection," Charles, by Harry's account, defaulted to the monarchy's traditional reflex: minimize, contain, don't inflame, don't engage the press openly. Whether that strategy is wise is a separate debate. What matters here is its cost. Harry has repeatedly described feeling that the institution would move quickly to correct narratives that threatened the heir, while refusing to offer the same public protection to him and Meghan. That perception, true or not in every detail, became the emotional reality of the relationship, the sense that preservation of the system outranked preservation of the son. This is how systems preserve themselves. Tabloids preserve storylines by rewarding exposure. Institutions preserve authority by rewarding restraint. In both cases, the fathers received validation for choices that hurt their children. Thomas remained visible, Charles remained stable, and stability, whether in a media narrative or a monarchy, often comes at someone else's expense. But then we have to ask the more human question: what about love? Isn't love supposed to overpower incentives? Love, unexpressed, can feel indistinguishable from absence. It is possible Thomas believes he loves his daughter while repeatedly choosing the very machinery that harms her. It is possible Charles loves his son while repeatedly choosing institutional containment over direct, courageous protection. But love that does not act, love that does not shield, becomes for the child on the receiving end a kind of hollow inheritance. There is a bitter twist of fate here. In their darkest hours, both Harry and Meghan have described looking to Princess Diana's example, especially her insistence that people's pain should not be treated as inconvenience. Harry has spoken often about how his choices are shaped by his mother's memory and by his fear of history repeating itself. Meghan has said publicly that living under relentless scrutiny gave her a deeper understanding of what Diana endured. And what of the public? The public verdict on both fathers is complicated. Thomas Markle is widely criticized as the archetypal bad dad, accused of selling out his daughter's privacy. King Charles is judged more softly by some, harsher by others, seen by critics as emotionally remote and institutionally cautious, and by supporters as dutiful and restrained. Either way, public reputation can remain surprisingly survivable even when private relationships collapse. That is one of the quiet cruelties of fame and power. The optics can be managed long after the home is broken. A cruel truth follows. Certain forms of neglect are incentivized. A calm public front is often praised as dignity, even when it requires silence in the face of harm. A steady stream of media appearances can keep someone culturally relevant, even when it deepens family devastation. Bad behavior gets attention. Good behavior, quiet accountability, private repair, rarely makes headlines. So, what is the cost? For Meghan, it shows in the moments when the mask slips and the human truth breaks through, like her televised admission that not many people have asked if I'm okay. For Harry, it appears in his own descriptions of anxiety, trauma, and the long road of therapy, as he recounts in Spare and related reporting. For Thomas, the cost looks like isolation, a life increasingly mediated through media contact rather than family. And in the Philippines hospitalization story, Reporting described a Daily Mail figure at his bedside and Meghan's spokesperson criticizing the situation as an ethical breach that made private communication extremely difficult. For Charles, the cost is a son across an ocean and grandchildren growing up largely outside his daily life. And then there is that line, one of the most revealing in the entire saga, quoted by Harry from his father. "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." It is human, it is weary, and it also suggests something about priority. Not the pain of the sons, not the safety of the family, but the desire for peace in the father's final chapter. In parallel narratives, two fathers made choices. One chose the glare of tabloids, one chose the shelter of the palace, and in different languages, interview and protocol, both chose against the simplest obligation to protect their child when it mattered most. In the quiet after the storm, what remains? We return to the images that opened this story, not as fact, but as metaphor. A hospital room, a palace hallway, two spaces defined by distance, silence, and power. The contrasts are stark, yet the emotional vacancy feels familiar. We can imagine Thomas Markle waking in that hospital room, surrounded not by family, but by the machinery of media attention. We can imagine King Charles at the end of a day of royal duties, alone in a room steeped in history, carrying the weight of decisions made and words left unsaid. These are not scenes we claim to witness, but reflections of what unresolved relationships often look like when public life recedes. Both men will, in their own ways, enter the historical record. Thomas Markle may be remembered as a cautionary figure in the age of celebrity, a father whose relationship with his daughter collapsed under the glare of the press. King Charles III's legacy will be far broader and more complex, a monarch who sought continuity and modernization in parts, yet who has struggled to heal his own family fractures. Public legacy and private reckoning are not the same thing. The monarchy is built to endure crises. Tabloid cycles are built to move on. But what lingers are the private reckonings, the moments no camera records, the conversations that never happened, the apologies never offered. There is, of course, still time. Time allows for the possibility of change, accountability, even reconciliation. Perhaps one day Charles may find words that acknowledge what his son and daughter-in-law endured. Perhaps Thomas may choose quiet over exposure and sincerity over spectacle. These are not predictions, they are human possibilities. Yet even if such moments come, the damage will not simply dissolve. Trust, once broken publicly, is difficult to rebuild privately. Meghan and Harry have spoken about finding peace in a life built away from the institutions that hurt them. They have created a home, raised their children, and spoken openly about the cost of silence. Meghan's vulnerability, when she admitted that not many people have asked if I'm okay, and Harry's candor about trauma, therapy, and grief give shape to what these failures cost. Parenthood, too, reframes memory. Meghan, now a mother, has spoken about protecting her children from the toxicity she experienced. Harry, shaped profoundly by the loss of his mother and the distance from his father, has described his determination to be present in ways he once lacked. In that sense, the next generation already represents a quiet break from the past. The title of Harry's memoir, Spare, was an act of reclamation, naming a wound rather than hiding it. In doing so, he made a vow of sorts, that no child of his would ever feel expendable. The failures of Thomas Markle and King Charles III are not identical, but they rhyme. They show how love can be displaced by fear, by pride, by systems that reward silence or spectacle. They remind us that betrayal does not always arrive with malice. Sometimes it arrives disguised as normalcy, as protocol, as just how things are done. In the end, this is not a story about villains. It is a story about choices and about what happens when fathers do not choose protection when it matters most. And yet, the final word need not be despair. The failures of one generation do not have to define the next. Meghan and Harry have refused to let that be the case. By naming harm, by choosing distance over destruction, and by building a different kind of family culture, they have interrupted a cycle. Whether Thomas Markle or King Charles ever fully reckon with their roles remains to be seen. Redemption, if it comes, will not be public or theatrical. It will arrive quietly, through accountability, through changed behavior, through humility. Until then, we are left with the lesson, crowned or common, a father's worth is not measured by status, silence, or image. It is measured by the willingness to stand between a child and harm. That is the most basic moral obligation of parenthood, and no crown, no camera, no legacy can replace it. When we step back from the details, from the headlines, and the heartbreak, what we are really examining here is not just two men who failed their children. We are examining how difficult parenthood already is, and how profoundly more complicated it becomes when powerful external forces intrude. Parent-child relationships are fragile even in the best of circumstances. They require humility, presence, and the willingness to choose the child over one's own comfort or ego. And yet, in this story, we see fathers who seemed perpetually out to lunch, emotionally absent, misaligned, or unwilling to confront what their children truly needed from them. And then we see the contrast. Doria Ragland stands quietly but unmistakably as an example of what showing up looks like. She has never monetized her daughter's pain. She has never courted the press. She has remained steady, dignified, private, and protective. Not perfect, but present. And that presence has mattered. We also know from history and testimony that Princess Diana would have been fiercely protective of Harry. She understood the cost of silence. She understood what happens when institutions prioritize survival over humanity. She warned that there was always another entity in the room, one that distorted reality, commodified suffering, and fed on conflict. That entity is the media. Modern media, particularly tabloid culture, has monetized anger, race, identity, and fear. It has generated extraordinary wealth for owners and sustained entire industries. Thousands of people in the UK make their living by talking about the royal family, and within that economy, Harry and Meghan have been relentlessly placed at the center, not because they are the most powerful, but because they are the most profitable. Pain sells, conflict sells, racism sells, and then there is the other force, older, heavier, more entrenched. A 1,000-year-old institution that does not simply shape individuals, but indoctrinates them, an institution that teaches the heir, generation after generation, that survival of the crown is paramount, that blood relationships, siblings, spouses, even children, are secondary to continuity, that the monarchy must endure at all costs. This is not conspiracy, it is structure. The heir is trained to protect the crown, not the family. The system guarantees its own survival by molding each successor into its custodian. And so we see the pattern repeat. The heir becomes the monarch becomes the institution, and relationships are sacrificed along the way. That is why these stories are not symmetrical. Thomas Markle failed as a father in a personal, devastating way. King Charles failed as a father within an institutional framework that rewarded his restraint and punished emotional courage. Prince William, as the future king, has already absorbed that same conditioning. Breaking free from that requires uncommon strength. And that is where Harry and Meghan stand apart. They are not stronger because they are flawless. They are stronger because they chose rupture over erasure. They chose to step away rather than be slowly destroyed. They chose to protect their children rather than preserve appearances. And despite everything, the loss, the betrayal, the public cruelty, they have not allowed bitterness to hollow them out. They have built. Through Invictus, Harry has created spaces of dignity, healing, and purpose for wounded veterans around the world. Through philanthropy, advocacy, and cultural work, they have invested in communities far beyond themselves, from Nigeria to mental health initiatives, from media literacy to family well-being. Meghan has continued to create documentaries, storytelling, cultural projects, not as escape, but as expression. They have insisted on joy. They have insisted on love. They have insisted on a future that does not replicate the past. That is what strength looks like. Not silence, not endurance for endurance's sake, but the courage to say, this stops with us. So if there is hope in this story, and there is, it lies not with the fathers who failed, nor with the systems that enabled them. It lies with those who refused to be broken by it. The failures of parents do not have to become the inheritance of children. Cycles can be interrupted, legacies can be rewritten, and sometimes the bravest act of love is walking away, not in anger, but in truth, and choosing to build something better in its place. That is the legacy Harry and Meghan are shaping now, and that, in the end, may matter far more than crowns, headlines, or history books ever could.
I don't remember asking for much, just something solid, just something real. You were always standing there, but never really stayed, eyes fixed on the distance, while I learned how to wait. You said the right words at the wrong time, told me love was complicated, but silence was fine. I watched you choose the easier road, watched you turn your head. Every time it mattered most, you left it unsaid. All I wanted was for you to stand in front of me. All I wanted was for you to choose me just once. Just once. You called it keeping peace, you called it doing your best. I called it learning early what I couldn't expect. You protected your comfort, you protected your name. I learned how to grow quiet so I wouldn't complain. You taught me how excuses sound when they dress up as truth, how love can disappear without ever leaving the room. All I wanted was for you to say, I've got you now. All I wanted was for you to draw the line somehow, but you didn't, you didn't. So thank you for the lesson I never asked for. You showed me exactly who I will never be. I learned that love shows up, that protection isn't loud, the silence is a choice, and and absence has a sound. All I wanted was simple and true. All I wanted was what I give now to presence, courage, a hand that doesn't leave. Thank you for the lesson of the parent I'll never be. I won't repeat this story, I learned it too well.
Well, as they say, all good things come to an end. And I'm truly hoping that this was a good thing. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I hope you got something out of it. Perhaps you learned something, or maybe you were just entertained. Either way, I'm good with that. If you're new around here, do subscribe so you'll be notified the next time we have another episode up, and perhaps you will watch that too. For those who are already subscribers, do remember to put your notification on. Sometimes notification works, sometimes it doesn't. Happens to me also. If you see it's not working, perhaps take it off and then put it back on. Okay? Is that whole thing when they say something doesn't work, you go to the plug, unplug it, plug it back in, see if it works. Also, remember to like, comment, share, and all those things that YouTube would like us to do in order for the algorithm to know that we still exist and that we're still putting out work that people enjoy, hopefully. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I thank you for allowing me to have this platform to tell stories, and I bring them to you the best way I know how to. And hopefully that is useful. What a story, eh? What a story. But they are some great and excellent parents out there too. Excellent dads, excellent moms. And to them we say thank you, and thank you. So for the Masaka kids sort of initiative that I'm trying to do, Callie Jen, thank you so very much for donating. Yay, Callie Jen. So remember, we have one initiative, but I'm going to add a second one. I'm just thinking about it. So the first one is go straight to the go found I can't why can't I go fund me link and donate to Masaka Kids. Tell me that you've donated. Find a way, either like a screenshot or something, and tell me you've donated and the amount you've donated. Your handle or name will go into um, a hat, a paper bag, or something, and I'll pick one name. Okay, so that's first prize. That person, you get, we get to collaborate, and I get to create a song just for you. So it could be a song that you may want to give as a holiday present, someone who means a lot to you and you want them to know through song. So it could be for a parent, a partner, a lover, husband, wife, your child, or perhaps for you. And we will do that. Also, on that same bag, the person who donates the largest amount, whatever that is, that person will also get the same treatment. Now, there's a second thing I'm thinking about. So I have about six, I think, either six or five songs that were created for the Masaka Kids docu-series review when I did that. So I've put all of them together. They're on the Bandcamp website. So it's one album. So if you go there, you will see it. And it's presently priced at $12.99, I think, Canadian dollars. But you can get 50% off of that if you use that code. Yeah, that code. So it will be 50% off, right? And all the proceeds from that, anyone who's buying the album, all the proceeds will be donated to Massacre Kids. So that way you get music and you donate. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourselves. Okay? Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to your loved ones. And to that stranger also that is crossing your path. You never know. You might be the kindest voice they've ever heard. Okay? Until we speak again, love you folks. Bye-bye.
We go, we go, we go. Move it to the left, move it to the right. Massacre children shining in the light. Step, step, drop it low, rise up, go. Step, step, drop it low, rise up, go. Hey mama, hey baba. Reading your massacre, massacre rhythm. Hey mama, hey baba. Tuzine wamu, let's dance together. Rhythm we rise, rhythm we fly. Dance in the dust, lift in the sky. Massacre heartbeat, carry a song. Child of the future, child of the song. Rhythm we rise, rhythm we shine. Walk through the darkness, holding the line. Where there is love, the night cannot stay. We rise, in the rhythm we pray. In the rhythm we pray.
Where the rhythm holds us when the world feels wrong. Light up the path, oh, light up the way. We dance through the struggle, we rise every day. From Massacre skies to the world far beyond. Hear the drum calling, we carry it on. Light up the path, so light up the way. Joy is our weapon, love is our sway. Where the children gather, the darkness departs. We rise with the rhythm.
Praise is found. Lift your voice, lift your heart. Every child a brand new start. When we move, the darkness fades. Light is born in the songs we raise. Dance in the light, dance in the light. Glory is moving through day and night. Joy in the drum, fire in the song. Massacre children standing strong. Dance in the light, dance in the light. Carry us home, Lord. Carry us home. Morning light on a dusty road. Little feet walk with a head. Oh, light up the way. Dance through the struggle. We rise every day. From Massacre hills to the world far beyond. Hear the drum calling. We'll carry it on. Love is our sway. Where the children gather, the darkness departs. We rise. Massacre shining. Light up the path.
Two men, two doors that never open. One man sat beneath fluorescent light. Machines breathing where love should have been. He called the world before he called his child. Traded blood for headlines, truth for ink. Another walk halls lined with gold. Portraits staring like they knew. He wore duty like a shield. and silence like a crown, while his son burned in plain view.